In today's tutorial, we're going to be creating a theremin and video audio oscillator inside of Touchdesigner. It's a very simple technique, but strangely enough, I don't see many people exploring sound and audio inside of Touchdesigner. So hopefully this can start as a sort of kickoff point for any of that sort of exploration, I can't say that word, that you might be interested in. Before I start, I just want to quickly note that my voice audio is being recorded separately from my desktop audio. So when I demonstrate the sound of the theremin, it will be recorded from my microphone. So if I turn it on right now and just turn it up, and I'm not sure if you can see there, but that is being controlled by my hand. So in today's tutorial, we're going to go over first how to incorporate hand tracking, how to turn that into an audio oscillator, and then how to visualize that data with instancing, which is some very useful beginner techniques in Touchdesigner. And it is worth noting that this file is available for download as is. You should be able to plug and play and work with any video device and start using this oscillator video in any sort of way. This would look really good if you incorporated a Pepper's Ghost, so I recommend doing that if that's something you know how to do. Otherwise, the last thing that I'm going to note is that we are going to show a few different ways of tracking your hand. The first way, which will probably be the most common, will be using just a webcam input and the default body track chop in Touchdesigner, which is very useful. But this is not as technically as advanced as something like MediaPipe, which uses an MI model to track hands, or simple Connect tracking. So if you've used a Connect in Touchdesigner before and you have a Connect of sorts, or any of those kind of cameras, I highly recommend using that. If you don't have a Connect, I highly recommend Googling MediaPipe in Touchdesigner. It's a free download that you can incorporate into your files, and you can output the hand tracking from that. I'll make sure to include that as a part of the Patreon file download if that is something you want to download. Otherwise, you will be able to use this body tracking component. It's just a little bit imprecise. It's the nice way of putting it. It's not VESA tracking. But as always, we're going to start off by deleting this whole network and just start creating it from scratch. So the first thing we want to do is get our video in device. So if we just go to our tops here and get a video device in like so. That is me. I have a few different cameras plugged in. I'm going to switch to my webcam, which is pointed upwards right now. If you have a Connect, you can simply grab a Connect from the chop tab, like so. I'll do both in parallel, but it's pretty much the same techniques. So from this video device in, we want to get the body tracked elements. So if we go and press tab and go to this chop section here and grab body tracked and then drag our video device onto it, you'll get this dotted line. And you see when we zoom in now, we have a bunch of different components. Now, the theremin that we're creating is a bit faux. It's not precise and it's not entirely accurate as reflecting how a theremin actually properly behaves. Instead, we're just going to be tracking the XY position of the hand and mapping that against two different audio oscillators. Don't worry if you don't know what that means. It'll make sense soon. So from the body track component, we want to do a select, and the same for the Connect. We want to do a select. Then we want to click the channel names and go ahead and select either your left or right hand. And for example, if we want to do right hand, we might want to do right wrist RX, which is going to be our X position, and then the same but RY. And then for the Connect, the names are a little bit different, but it's the same gist. We just want to get our hand right, so hand underscore R, which is somewhere, I don't know, or we can do our left hand if we really want to, TX, and then TY. Cool. So connecting this to an audio oscillator is pretty simple. Now this is a tutorial aimed at beginners, so I will do a little bit of explanation to what is going on. Basically, we have our, sorry, one second. We can connect these two values that when I raise my hand, you can see it's pretty jumpy, pretty stuttery. It works better when you have your whole body in frame. We can connect these values to an audio oscillator. From this point forward, I'm going to use the connect as it's a little bit more reliable, but bear in mind you can do the exact same with the body track component. So by right-clicking this and going to audio oscillator, it's going to connect it to the first input here, which is our pitch control. So as we have two different inputs, it's automatically created two different waves. One of these is going to be our right channel and our left channel. So like left and right speaker. If we want to hear this, you need to connect it to an audio device out and then set it to whichever device you want, like my speakers. And if I turn my speakers up, you can see we have sound. I'm going to leave that disabled for now. So, an audio oscillator, in the sense, to give a very basic overview, is just a wave that pulses back and forth and generates a very nice sound. So by assigning it to pitch control, basically we're saying, hey, when we change these values, I want you to change the pitch of each wave. So the X horizontal will be our right, and then our Y will be our left. So if I unplug my speakers, if I turn on my speakers, and then if my Connect recognizes me, the funny thing about Connect is you need to get it to recognize your whole body. There we go. You can see it's pretty much already working, and we've pretty much just done it already. It's a bit, like I said, faux, as we're only doing pitch control as opposed to how an actual theremin works. But it is worth noting that you can still play around with it. So if you want to get a different kind of sound, so a sine wave is a very soft sort of sound like that, a very round sound, but we can change it to a triangle, which will be a bit more harsh. I'm not sure how loud that's coming across. Square will be very similar to old video games. And you can sort of play around with that however you like. You're also welcome to play around with the bass frequency, units per octave, amplitude. Or another way to sort of add more control is between the select and audio oscillator, you can insert a math chop, and then under the multi-add tab, we can multiply it by, say, like a value like 10, which is just going to obviously make this value 10 times more intense, which will make the sounds a lot more dynamic. Like so. So yeah, play around with that to your liking. And that's basically the entire audio component. Now I do want to mention in Touchdesigner, there's a whole suite of audio controls. There's like filters, there's EQs, and like really cool effects. And you can in theory make an entire sound composition inside of Touchdesigner. So if that's something that interests you, please dive into it. I would love to see more creators doing some cool stuff with that. But as for our tutorial, that's pretty much going to be the whole audio component. I'm thinking of doing another tutorial in future where I control an audio filter with my hand. So if that's something you're interested in, please let me know. But it's time to create the visual part of this. So what we want to do is we want to go to our SOP tab and get an add, and then connect this to a particle. Then on our add, we want to make sure our add points is turned on, and then basically this is just going to generate a bunch of particles for us. So in order to actually generate these, we need to right click the particle and go to comp and then get a geometry. Then we want to get the typical rendering components. By this I mean a camera and a light, as well as under the top tab, a render. That's a remap. Let's grab a render. These three will automatically point towards the render. I'm then going to set my output resolution to 1080p, but if you have the free version, you won't be able to do that. From the render, I'm going to connect in a null and set that to display as background. So we don't see anything as of yet. That's because we need to instance the sound. So to instance the sound, we need to convert this information to RGB values and then turn that RGB values into position data. The way we do that is going from this audio oscillator. We want to grab a chop 2 under the top tabs and drag and drop it onto that. We then want to set our data format to RG, because R will just be 1 dimension, so RG will be 2 dimensions. RGB, we don't have a third channel here, but if you incorporated a third channel, maybe your back and forth hand, you could do a 3D oscillator, which would be really cool, but not for today's tutorial. And then image layout, make sure we say fit to square. So this is looking very harsh. I'm going to turn this back to a sine wave for now. So then from here, we can go to our geometry, go to our instancing tab, this third one along, and click on. We can then drag this chop onto translate OP, and then set the X to R and G to, Y to G. We can't see it because it's very, very small, but we essentially have our oscillators in, and if you just saw it flashing before, you can sort of start to gather that it's there. So in order to see it, we just need to add a few more image filters. Oops. So if I go to the palette up here, and let's grab under image filters, a bloom, as well as a feedback. I'm just going to set the bloom to 11-bit float. And then, we also need to add a material. Sorry, completely skipped over that step. Under the materials tab, I'm just going to do a point sprite and drag and drop that onto geometry. Now we can definitely see it, just very faintly in the background. And I'm going to set this point sprite to a neon green sort of color, as that's what typical audio oscillators used to look like. Cool. All right. Yeah, so back under the bloom, 11-bit float makes it more easy to understand what all the controls do. Drag the threshold right down, drag the intensity up, just picking arbitrary numbers right now, and I'm going to drag the blur also all the way down. Then if we connect in our render to the first slot, and then that back into there, we can now see we have our oscillator of sorts. I might even connect in this feedback like so, and get a bit more of a cooler wave. I'm then going to play with the color a little bit to get the green. So if I bring down the glow level, make sure I bring down the ramp as well, and then maybe bring the bloom up. Yeah, that's starting to look really nice. From here, if I insert a RGB key, it will set our background to black. And if you want to incorporate your video device, you can add a comp like so. Drag in from the transparent background, the feedback for example, and then drag in your video device as well, like so, and then maybe set the operation to over, which will overlay it. And now we can control it, and you can see it in real time. And that is pretty much the entire tutorial. It's a really, really simple technique, but it's just very effective, and it's a very, very cool thing to play around with. I think this tutorial really highlights the versatility of Touchdesigner, the fact that you can make a theremin that's controlled by your hands, as well as visualize that information all in 10 minutes inside of Touchdesigner, is a really, really awesome display of how cool this software is. So if this is something you've enjoyed, a like and a subscribe would be greatly appreciated. Like I said, all of my tutorials and project files are available on my Patreon. It's just a few bucks a month, and you get instant access to every project file I've done, as well as all the private ones I upload there. But yeah, otherwise these tutorials are free, and you're welcome to keep following along and suggest any ideas you might have. Let me know what you thought of today's tutorial. I know it's not as, say, useful as some of my other ones, but if this strikes a chord with anyone, I would love to know. But other than that, I'm going to leave it there for today. Thank you so much for watching, and enjoy.